We're live, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back. Logos Media's UnSpun episode number, what is this? 143. We have a great show lined up tonight. Gentlemen, I'm joined by Isabella Wilson, and we've got a great discussion. Isabella is actually my youngest guest, and she's a recent high school graduate, and we have a very interesting discussion on the pill tonight, and I swear we're not going to be discussing the Huxleys at all. Just kidding. And so, you know, the Huxleys, of course, in all of these investigations, the Huxleys come up as a repeated theme in the discussion. Sorry about that. I think that should have just killed the double audio there. Hopefully that fixes it, folks. I'm not hearing it, so it should be fixed now. Sorry about that. Anyway, so Isabella, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Jan. I'm glad to be here.
Well, you know, you had gotten into a conversation with some family members several months ago about the pill, and
yes.
You were against taking it, and they were telling you should take it, and we're going to do some research tonight and go into the actual medical citations and everything on what is good about the pill and what isn't, if there is any good or if there is any bad. And I think
what's good is a very, like, why can't I think of the word? It's a very opinionated kind of thing. People think that it's good because they don't get pregnant, but that doesn't outweigh all of the negatives.
Right. Well, and I intentionally left the title of this show very ambiguous. So that those who are interested in taking the pill and looking for research and videos on it, they might play this and learn something, and those who might be looking for information why not to take it might also play it as well. And
yes,
thanks for everybody who's joined us in the chat. Some of you were in the other show that we were watching tonight. It's good to have you over here. And unfortunately, we're still not able to use the primary channel for at least another 7 weeks. That's if they ever unlock it. Of course, there are more than 60,000 subscribers on the other channels, so we are limited to the backup and then copying it over to the main channel. Why don't we dive right in? I know you have a lot of research to discover on this topic. Why don't you first start off by telling us a little bit about yourself?
I graduated from high school this past year, in the year of 2018, and I always did a lot of research, like, on my own. I spent a lot of my high school years doing a lot of my own kind of education and research and learning all of this different stuff. So I've been interested in, globalism, in eugenics, all of these different studies for years now. And when I was doing research on this subject, I wish that I had known all of the information that I have now before, so I could have told my friends about it when they were thinking about it and such. It's definitely very interesting to see how people will try to influence you to take the pill just because of dermatological issues, because of menstrual issues. They will prescribe it for many different reasons and not just for birth control.
And so with and let me just pull up, we have an outline here. With the pill, being on the pill, what sort of difficulties does it cause?
Well, the first thing that I'm going to touch on is that the pill is directly related to having difficulties choosing the right mate, which is a huge study. It's been touched on by a lot of different scientists, professors, and anthropologists. I'm going to go over Lionel Tiger's study from the early 1970s at some point here. They show that this doesn't only affect women in finding the right mate, it also affects men in finding the right mate, because they show that women can't produce pheromones as easily while they're on the pill. And so that'll create hysteria in men, and it will create confusion in women. And that's just the first thing that we're going to be talking about here.
And for those of you who don't know and who are asking in the chat, yes, the pill means birth control pill.
Yes.
And the men will want to hear this episode as well. It's important for both sexes to hear this episode, and you will be surprised at the reasons that we're going to be uncovering during this episode.
Yes. And I wrote a quote from an article that I cited here. A review of past research finds that by altering hormonal cycles, the pill might affect choice of mates among members of both genders in a way that could hinder successful reproduction in the future. You could relate this to gender dysphoria that's so common nowadays, to all the mental health issues that are rising rapidly. It could all be a sign of not mating with the right person and having a hard time choosing the right genetics and therefore having genetic issues in your children.
Okay, and let me just ask you, can you put your camera more centered over the monitor that you're looking at?
Thanks. Sorry about that. Is that good?
Yeah, that's better. All right, so, and in the early 70s, there was an anthropologist, Lionel Tiger. Why don't we go into him and what he found? This is going to be really startling information here.
Yes, this is definitely one of the most exciting, well-researched subjects that I have found. In the early 1970s, an anthropologist named Lionel Tiger conducted a study on a tribe of monkeys to see the effect of contraceptive birth control and what they may have on mate selection. And the leader of the tribe was a monkey named Austin, and the rest were females. Lionel Tiger gave contraceptive birth control to the 3 favorite females that Austin liked, and he stopped having sex with them and started going to the other females that he didn't necessarily like before, just because his favorites were on birth control and their pheromones were being messed with. They weren't as attractive to him. And when all of the monkeys were given the birth control except for him, Tiger explained that Austin began to rape, masturbate, and behave in a turbulent and confused manner. But
and he wasn't on anything, only the females were, correct?
Yes. He was only being affected by the females around him not producing pheromones anymore, because birth control will put you in a state of right post-pregnancy. When you are not ovulating, you are not having your cycle, you are just not producing any pheromones or anything like that. It's just very straight and no way to attract a mate naturally. This also causes women to dress more provocatively if they are on the pill. And yeah, so...
So the males started raping and masturbating, etc., because the females were on the pill now.
Yes.
For the audience out there, make the connection to that in the, so we just did a month and a half, 2 months ago, the show Whack on the addiction to internet porn. And
yes.
And then we hear all of this rape culture going on, and then we, all of this hypersexualization that we've seen since the so-called sexual liberation movement and all. So
yes,
all of this actually ties together with women, we're all primates in a sense, taking the pill. And
yes.
Yes, go ahead. I'll let you.
Oh yeah, of course. Sorry. Toxic femininity can cause toxic masculinity, because women, if they're on the pill, I'm not excusing rape by any means. I am just saying that it is much more likely to happen because a man might have a harder time finding a mate. They might already be prone to do something like that, but it will drive them more to do it because they feel confused by the pheromones going around them. It's a subconscious thing. They don't actively know this, but if you look at how animals act and how humans act, we are animals. So if you compare this to the monkey tribe and the study in the 70s, then it looks very similar in a big culture.
Correct. And so somebody made the joke that did the monkeys begin dressing more provocatively as well? So go ahead.
That would be very interesting if they did.
All right. So men and women alike. Let's talk about this next study. New study: fertile strippers make more money than strippers that don't. And I'm going to pull this up here as well. And
when this says right here let me find the exact quote. Scientists at the University of New Mexico say exotic dancers earn the best tips just before ovulating. But if a woman is on birth control, then she's not going to have ovulation. And so they're not going to make as good of tips because they're not putting off the pheromones that the women that aren't do put off, basically.
That's fascinating. And
yes.
So, so there you go. If you do such provocative behavior, if you are on the pill, you will make less money than you are off.
Yes.
And so this is actually proof that the same thing is happening in our own species as with the monkeys.
Yes. And another quote in this same article says dancers who weren't on the pill made about $70 an hour during peak fertility versus about $35 while menstruating and $50 in between. Girls who took birth control averaged about $37 an hour with no performance peak, because they did not have the ups and downs that women that are not on birth control have. And so they were all just, like I said, that straight line. There's no cycle. There's just one particular way that your body is.
All the time. Wow.
Yes. Yeah.
All right. So very interesting. All right.
And I did see another study at one point, or I did see other researchers talking about this. I don't have a direct citation at this moment, but I did see that women, when they put a man in a room of women and they'll put pictures of really attractive women and not put clothes that have pheromones in them in there, and they'll think that they're attractive. But when you put clothing of an ovulating woman in the room, men will immediately find more homely looking women more attractive because of those pheromones.
Interesting.
Yes.
Wow. Well, that sure explains a lot.
Yeah.
All right. So let's talk about the theory that there are higher divorce rates.
Yes, that is definitely something that I kind of thought of. There are higher divorce rates, and women tend to get off of hormonal birth control at some point in their marriage just because they are married. Usually they want to have children at some point, whatever the reason may be. And I think that this could possibly lead to them deciding that they don't want to be with each other because they aren't the right genetic match. And they don't know this until after she's off of the pill and she realizes that this isn't the right mate that she wanted, or he realizes that she's not the right mate for him. It creates confusion for them. And there are higher divorce rates now than there were before the pill was released.
And so, so a woman is dressing more slutty and the guy is all confused and jerking off to porn. And he's like, okay, so here's this mate, and they're both incompatible, but they choose the wrong mate because of the pill. And I also wonder if the pill wasn't involved in the first place, if they would have had a stronger bond to begin with.
They probably wouldn't have, because if the woman was not on the pill and there weren't pheromones in the water, there weren't hormonal hormones in the water and all this stuff that we're getting from the birth control. Water evaporates into air. It could be airborne for all we know. If we weren't being exposed to this, then we would not be having as many issues with relationships that we see in pop culture nowadays, especially. I think that it has a huge, huge effect on people getting into wrong relationships, having children with the wrong people, This could be tied to the welfare state and having a bunch of kids to get money, because you don't feel that emotional attachment to your significant other that you would if the pill was not released. And you might not even be with that person anyways. You would be with somebody else.
Interesting. All right. So, and then birth control pills alter the structure of a woman's brain. Let's get into the research on that.
Yes. So right here, it says a study in the journal Brain Research found that birth control pills had effects on the regions of the brain that govern.
I've got hormones in the water up. It looks like I've got this mixed up. Here we go.
Oh, here we go. Perfect. So the birth control pills had effects on regions of the brain that govern higher order cognitive activities, which includes the prefrontal cortex, which commands reasoning and logic, and the posterior cingulate cortex, which commands awareness and like physical awareness, internal and external. And from a quote on this, Women's Brains on Steroids, Birth Control Pills Appear to Remodel Brain Structure, a quote says, "What of the mammal's nervous system? It turns out that the brain is a veritable sponge for for steroid hormones. In the male, the androgen testosterone or metabolite binds to brain receptors and sculpts that structure into the aggression-promoting, sex-craving, risk-taking regulator with which we are all familiar. By the same token, the comparative lack of androgen hormones in the female produces the kinder, gentler, softer, neutral substrate that distinguishes itself from the male by dint of its vastly different behavioral repertoire." Now, the pill will increase testosterone in a woman. And that is a pretty well-known fact. So increasing testosterone will make you want to have sex more. It will make you more aggressive. It might even make you more apathetic in some cases. And that definitely has a huge effect on women. It will make you lose gray matter in your prefrontal cortex, which can make your brain scans look similar to that of a sociopath's.
And so, just to make the connection here.
Yes.
Those women who do end up pregnant and going full term, now we see them wanting to murder their full term babies.
Yes, and a lot of people will argue against this and say that it's for medical reasons. There have been, Planned Parenthood definitely is not only going to do medical reasons. There are a lot of dirty doctors out there that will give you an abortion just because you don't want to go through with the pregnancy. And some of these people do not feel apathy. They don't feel empathy for their children. They will not feel any regret and many other things. And getting an abortion because of a medical reason is an entirely different story than getting an abortion.
Isn't that actually the smallest portion of why women get abortions in reality? And then, what was it? Only 1,600 abortions a year were due to rape when there was millions for other reasons.
If I actually look up the abortion statistics in the United States, the abortion the abortion time clock, I'm trying to find it right now.
Yeah, here. You know what? And I think I have it in the database here. Let me.
Perfect.
Oh, good grief. Let me see
All
if
right.
I can find it.
Perfect. I found it just now, actually.
I want to share it on screen, though. So.
All right. Here. It's I looked up the abortion time clock. And that was the first result.
Is that this one number of abortions counters, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so we're at 1.526 billion abortions and counting
since 1980 itself. Yes.
Since 1980, and then let's see. Does this one go ahead?
Out of 143,500 abortions in the United States alone this year,
you're
only
cutting out a little bit there.
392. Oops,
only how many? Go ahead. Only how many were what? Only
1,392 out of 143 3,500 in the United States have been due to rape or incest.
So it's actually less than 1%.
Yes, it is way less than 1%.
So all of those women that are screaming that it's about rape and, this and that, that's a lie.
It is a lie, because everybody says that they have reasons for abortions because of rape, because of health issues, when if you look at the actual statistics based on medical documents, that is a very rare thing. Most abortions are because they're not ready for a kid.
Wow. All right. So I'm just looking at that.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
And in the United States today, there have been more abortions today due to whatever than abortions this year due to rape or incest. 1,849 abortions today in the United States, and 1,392 in the United States since the beginning of this year due to rape or incest.
Yeah, and then so let's see. United States today, 1,800 abortions.
Yes.
Planned Parenthood since 1970, 8.3 million. Planned Parenthood this year, almost 53,000. Thank you for the donation, whomever just sent that. I appreciate that. That's actually the first donation for the day. And by the way, please support the show. They have shut down the live feed on the main channel, and they're trying to squeeze us out financially for the show and the work we've done. So, if those of you would please take your time to go to the logosmedia.com website and, donate directly. It's greatly appreciated, rather than, not supporting at all because the super chat button isn't there anymore. Hopefully in a couple of months or in about 7 weeks, we'll get it back. They haven't even, I filed a counterclaim against it more than a month ago. They haven't even responded to it. So, an appeal. So definitely need all of your support. So please click the link there in the chat. You can also donate Bitcoin or whatever. I'm not like Joe Rogan and these other people who are making money off it on the side. It's just what you folks donate. So let's get into the next one here.
All right.
Let's see. What do we have? Yeah, and you had talked about losing gray matter already. What's the next one we have here? Women who use birth control pills are poorer judges of subtle facial expressions.
Yes, and it also leads to them having issues with social cues. So I noticed.
I guess I must have some of these links mixed up here. So let me just copy this address. I thought I had them all in order. So I'll just close out the ones that we've already discussed.
All right.
Here we go. Let's see. Mate selection is done. And let's just try to get these up here. All right. Oral contraceptives could impair women's recognition of complex emotions. And that was probably on the very next tab that I hadn't clicked yet. I didn't want to click the wrong one and give away what was next. I probably should have just clicked the next one. So, all right, let's talk about this one.
So the pill could blur your social judgment, as it says in this first sentence here. I personally noticed that a lot of girls that I know that are on birth control have a hard time knowing when to stop pushing people. And they are pushy. They are they can be rude. They can make poor judgments. They might think that you're attacking them when you're not. This is related to increased paranoia that was not there prior to taking the pill.
So
it can also create phobias.
Are you saying when these women are button pushers and go, bing, 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 and hit your buttons constantly, that might actually be because they're on the pill? And
yes, it could definitely be because of that. I know that. I have a few people that I've known personally that I've known before, and after they start taking the pill, it makes them a lot more emotional. It makes them start fights easier. They have no tolerance for anything, no matter how little it is. They just they get very triggered very easily. It definitely increases the ability to get more upset over something that you would not normally get upset over.
So what's the benefit of taking the pill other than having many, many, many partners?
It clears up your skin. It's the only benefit that I can think of, when in reality it'll clear up your skin, but it's also going to make your hair grow in thinner and not make you look so great.
Yeah, and we'll talk about that in
Yeah.
a little bit. So the primary thing is your skin might get clearer.
Yeah.
And if you stopped eating sugar and grains, your skin would get clearer anyway.
Or if you get on some medical stuff as well, you know, there's a lot of different things that you can use to clear up acne other than birth control pills. It is pushed for reasons that are not related to birth control and not related to menstrual regulation as well, which that's another positive to it, is that it makes your period normal, but at the same time, the rest of your body is not cycling normally when you're doing that. So it's, you know, it's a lot of gray area there that people could say that it's positive, and I guess on the surface it looks positive, but it's really not. It's creating more problems than positivities.
All right, so let's see here. The birth control pill can have negative effects on your quality of life.
Yes. This is a big Scandinavian study I found. Sweden and Denmark both had scientists that went on these studies. They reduce the general well-being in healthy women, and it will make them more likely to be depressed. It will make you more suicidal. There are a lot of things that it will create. And
I'm going to try to get that one open here. Excuse me while I try to get these links sorted out. Sorry, folks. All right. Oral contraceptives reduce general well-being. Okay, so that was... Okay, I see. Anyway, I must have mixed them up. Go ahead.
So if you look at the first study here, the Swedish study of the oral contraceptives reducing general well-being in healthy women, they gave placebo pills to women and they gave regular pills to women. And the women who had placebo pills were happy. They were living quality life. They weren't having issues with depression or with physical health, whereas women who were given the pill were more depressed. They were more miserable. They were unhappy overall, and they were having more health issues. It definitely created plenty of issues in their life rather than just mental. It created physical problems as well.
All right, and thank you, Miles and Jan, for the donations. I really appreciate that. All right, let's get into this. Massive study says contraceptive pills linked to depression and teens most at risk.
Yes. So teenagers at this time and age are already more likely to be depressed than they were in the 1950s, for instance. I have seen studies of stress levels in teenagers being the same as they were in mental patients in the 1950s. And I think that this could be because of the pill and because of hormones in the water, in our food. We are all exposed to it, basically. So
Wow.
So it's not just people taking the pill, it's everybody that's exposed to hormones. This is from people using, the hormones could be from people in hormonal therapy due to transgenderism, or it could be due to the birth control pill. But they are not unalike because they are both hormonal therapy.
All right. And let's see. Pill directly related to plethora of health issues.
Yes.
And this is from cancer.gov.
Yes. Cancer.gov directly says that women who take the pill are much more likely to have ovarian cancer at some point. It says over here, it says here, women who were currently using oral contraceptives had a 24% increase in risk that did not increase the duration of use. And this was a 24% increase in the risk of ovarian cancer. That is a big percentage of cancer that you did not have before. And sometimes people have genetics where people in their family had that before. This could put their lives potentially in danger.
So cervical cancer, endometrial cancer, ovarian cancer, etc. And then
Yes.
all the studies linked down there at the bottom, directly off of a government website admitting that they are linked to cancer.
Yes. And a lot of I know that a .gov website is definitely going to make people look more, and there are studies that say that it doesn't increase the risk of cancer, but it does. And there is plenty of research to go behind this and say that this will happen. And lots of scientists say that it's just a ticking time bomb when you start taking it to more health issues that could be caused in the future.
All right, and then inflammatory bowel disease and Crohn's disease, and this, of course, is also linked to wheat and grains. So if you are on the pill, you are going to have an increased chance of inflammatory bowel disease as well.
Yes, and going back to what you said about wheat and grain, the pill could make you less likely to have a healthier diet just because you don't have as much control over your body. You're not aware of when your body's sick or when it's saying no to something. It's just not, you're not receiving you're not getting the receptors from your brain to say, hey, you need to stop eating this or you need to stop doing this because that's unhealthy. So that alone will put you more at risk for inflammatory diseases.
All right. Cardiovascular, stroke, and breast cancer. My goodness.
Yes. Yeah. And another thing that I thought was kind of interesting was that birth control may double the chance of having glaucoma. And when I read this, I was really interested because I was like, I don't understand how an eye disease could have any correlation to birth control. But there are a lot of studies, and that glaucoma is one of the leading causes of blindness. It could make your eyesight worse over time if you take birth control pills. I think that could have a very bad effect on people just in their sight. And I think that the fact that it's messing with your sight at all when it's not even related to anything that the birth control is pushed for is a very sketchy thing. It makes you wonder what else they put in there to create problems like that.
Interesting. And folks, please watch your language in the chat. And so let's see here. Oh,
Yes,
all right.
brain
So
shrinkage is mentioned again in here. Like they said, the gray matter, it does shrink. It does create physical malfunctions in your brain. You lose matter, you lose size. It dumbs you down a lot.
okay, so let's see. Is that the same one? Yes, I guess so. I think I have that one open twice, or maybe not. There's so many tabs. I must have had 20 or 30 tabs open at the beginning of this, so sorry for the confusion. I tried to have them all organized, and apparently I did not. So, again, thanks, everybody, for your support tonight. Please support the show. Super chats. Oops, I'm putting the link to the citations in the chat rather than to the donate page. That's kind of funny. So, we should probably put some of these links down in there too. But again, the super chat has been turned off for at least another 7 weeks. So I really appreciate everyone's support directly through the website. They're trying literally to squeeze me out and shut me down for putting this information out. So all of your help is greatly appreciated. Let's get back to, oops, wrong window again. Good grief. So many windows to go through here. You got 3 monitors and you still can't keep them all straight. All right, so let's see. I think we are. Okay, so let's get into blood clots and hair loss.
Yes. So blood clots, I actually did get prescribed for birth control at one point a couple of years ago. And I did read the back of the box, and it said that a common health risk is blood clots. And when I read all of the health risks, I was like, no way, I'm not putting this in my body and putting myself at risk for this. So this is mentioned on birth control boxes, that it will increase your chance for blood clots. This can also cause issues if you smoke cigarettes. It will increase these issues with blood clots. It could potentially hospitalize you. It could cancel out the birth control at some point and completely, cancel out the reason that you're using it for the first place. I have known people that use birth control that smoked cigarettes. It canceled out the birth control because of blood clots, and then they got pregnant. So this is a common thing that happens with women.
Wow. And they tell you that there's only like a 1% chance of getting pregnant when you're on the pill, or less, something like that. Or
they say that, but that is only if you use the pill correctly. You're not smoking any cigarettes, you are keeping perfect health, and that is very rare for women to do because it creates problems in being able to do that in the first place. And
if you were healthy at all, why would you be on the pill in the first place? I mean,
exactly.
Both mentally, physically healthy, you wouldn't be taking the pill and participating in that sort of behavior.
Yeah, well, basically, women who are healthy and get on the pill are either on the pill to sleep around, or they are on the pill to have unprotected sex in their relationship. Unprotected being not using a condom and anything.
And then you should be reconsidering your unhealthy decisions or your unhealthy mental choices of why you're wanting to sleep around or having unprotected sex. So then it's like, okay, well, it used to be, rather than just sleeping around, people thought these things through and said, well, maybe there was a reason why we bonded with one mate. And there's the issue of pair bonding. That's a whole other thing that we haven't even touched on, is when women sleep around, they get the DNA in their brains of every guy that they've ever been with. So when you think of this over a long period of time, that's probably why it was related to hysteria and things like that. And then you had hysterectomies.
Yes.
So who knows the depth that goes there, but there's probably a tie in there. But there was a reason why people pair bonded. You had one man and one woman for life together and not, sleeping around.
Human beings are social creatures, but they are not naturally sexually social. They are mated for life. We choose lifelong partners. You see this in other pack animals like wolves, for instance. They do the same thing. They choose one mate and they stay with them until they die. One of them dies, and sometimes they'll move on, but sometimes they won't. If you look at other social animals and look at their patterns in mating, then you see that there's a very similar pattern in what human beings used to be more commonly, let me reword that. In what human beings used to do more commonly than they do now.
Yeah, and now today, hypersexualization is normalized thanks to Aldous Huxley and the CIA and the feminist movement, et cetera. The women's liberation movement is how all of this has been sold. So that, and we'll talk about this. And I had sent you some quotes of Margaret Sanger's discussing women being able to sleep around as much as men without having any ramifications for doing so. So this was the sexual liberation movement. It's denying nature and just saying, hey, I have this pill. Now I can sleep around as much as I want. And
yes, exactly.
And so then we see rampant increases in disease and everything else as well.
Yeah, and the thing is, people say that it was never looked down upon for men to sleep around with a bunch of women, but
that's not true at all. Right.
Yes. It was looked down upon for you to sleep around with anybody but who you were married to, and that was the basis of everything back in the medieval ages, in the early 1900s, the 1800s, any time before the pill was released.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And that's what I've found from my own research looking into all of this as well. And, it's really, from my own personal history, when I was in high school, when I was in like 10th grade, my dad, he's a veterinarian. I'm a doctor. I know best, and he gave me a box of condoms, and that was my sexual education, and it's like, looking back at it and how I've raised my son to be aware of all of this, it's, my son understands all of this stuff, and not just, here's a box of condoms, go out and have fun. Safe sex means, wear one of these, and it's like, no, that's not really what it's about. So, rather than choosing a proper mate that you do want to spend your life with, we're given all of these confusing messages by, people even within our own families that, hey, there's these pills or these condoms or whatever. So therefore, this behavior is okay. And when you take a step back and you remove yourself from it and look at it, even from a biblical perspective, you begin to understand why these social rules were put in place, not to control us, but, to keep us from ending up on a path that the whole culture is on now, where, women think they're free because they can murder babies, and sleep with 60, 70, 80 partners, whatever the heck, and
Yes.
And not have a family. And then because there is no family and extended family, you have, and all of these people who sold this, like Aldous Huxley, et cetera, the Fabian socialists, it all gets down into socialism and communism, because when you don't have that family and that extended family, you're going to be reliant upon the state to take care of you in your older years, rather
Yes,
than your own
exactly.
family. And those who have family and extended family, they don't care what the government does, because they can take care of everything on their own. In fact, they want the government out of their lives, because the government is only there to take from the producers, which are the families, in fact, to give to those who never settled down to produce a family and to, extend their family tree, the tree of life.
Yes.
So, that gets wiped out, and then you're only left with promoting socialism or communism governmental constructs, which we see rampant right now. And, hopefully people are beginning to wake up. It looks like you're being passed notes and stuff over there.
No, I'm not. Something was about to fall over there, and I had
I
to
see.
make sure
So,
it didn't.
all right. So let's get into hair loss here. Let me see if I can find that one correctly. Here we go. I actually clicked on the right button that time.
Yeah. So, hair loss is also common in chemotherapy. I just realized as I pulled this up. And chemotherapy also gives you other health issues just like this. It's what happens when you go on anything that is majorly changing your body. Hair is going to fall out. That is a very, very common sign that something is going wrong. And a lot of people know that your hair will fall out when you get a new disease, when you have cancer. It's a sign that something is going wrong in your body. And so if your hair is falling out while you're on the pill, it means that something is not right. Something's not working in your body to actually make your hair fall out in clumps.
Unless you're like an aging male.
Yeah, that's obviously a different story, but
and with men, it just kind of shifts. It kind of just goes whoop, it just goes from the top of the head to the bottom.
Yeah.
So let's see here. And then we have Crohn's disease. Did we already talk? We did talk about
Yes.
Crohn's disease
Yes,
some.
we did.
So, all right. And then we have, let's talk about breast cancer here.
Breast cancer.
I got, this is Crohn's disease. Okay. So, and you know what? We didn't have this image up before. Birth control pill shrinks women's brains and increases risk of Crohn's disease. I know you talked about that, but and that's from 2015. I just wanted to show this on screen for those of you who may want to read that. Let's see here. All right. This is cervical cancer. Okay. Which one are we on now?
We were about to talk about breast cancer.
All right. Let me see if I can get the right link up here.
Yes. So the title for this article is Surgeon, Birth Control Pill is a Molotov Cocktail for Breast Cancer. And all of the different hormones in your body that are not natural is going to create your cells to degenerate, basically. And that is what cancer is caused by. It's caused by cell issues more than anything. And if something is not working in your cells, that will increase your risk of any kind of cancer. This could increase your risk of lung cancer if you already smoke, because your white cells will not be, well, theoretically, your white cells will probably not be working as well when you're on the pill.
Now, Jan in the chat asks if, not me, Jan, but another Jan, in the chat asks if, and I'm assuming that this is correct, it just hits is correct. So pregnancy reduces breast cancer risk.
I would think so, yes. I would probably have to do a little more research on that just because I didn't think of that question. But yes, I would believe that having a child and creating more cells in your body would reduce your risk of any cancer if you did not have it prior.
Interesting. And somebody says, yes, it does. I'm not going to give away. All right, so let's see. Okay, and we have hardening of the arteries, yet another one. My goodness. Wow.
Yes,
women,
lots of blood issues.
Women, wow, it's just like, it's amazing that more women aren't dropping dead.
Women do a lot of bad things to their body to have a lot of sex. They would rather harden their arteries than give up their liberation as a woman.
Okay, so this one is blood clots. FDA, is that the one we're on? Which one are we on? Hold on, let me just.
We are on the birth control pill linked to hardening of the arteries.
There we go. Boy, I really missed a lot of these links. I apologize. All right, so let's go into this study here. And it says 1,300 healthy women aged 35 to 55 living in the small town of Belgium have observed that those women who take oral contraceptives may have more plaque, a hard fatty deposit, build up in their arteries, which, of course, is going to be linked to more heart attacks, etc. Arteriosclerotic plaque is comprised of cholesterol. Of course, they don't mention if it's HDL or LDL cholesterol. LDL, heart disease causing cancer, comes from grains, typically not meat, butter, and eggs, which is contrary to what most people believe. So.
What's interesting about this is that there are a lot of blood clot issues, lots of artery issues, lots of blood issues in general. These are directly related to heart attacks and other heart problems as well. It would not be surprising if a lot of women who had problems with, or a lot of women who took birth control had a problem with heart issues eventually in their life. They may not still take the pill, but the hormones are still going to be messed up in your body permanently in some cases.
Good grief. Wow.
Yeah.
And when you start putting all of this stuff together, and, the reason why this is called 5 reasons is reason 1 that we already covered was being on the pill causes difficulties in choosing the right mate. 2 is the birth control pill alters the structure of a woman's brain. 3 was the pill can have a negative effect on your quality of life. And 4, which we've been going through now, is the pill is directly related to a plethora of health issues. And so let's see, we've covered glaucoma. Did we get into cervical cancer yet?
No, we did not.
All right, so let's get that one up here. I know I had it up there. I probably can't find it. I'll just...
So the name of the article is Birth Control Pill Linked to 400% Increased Risk of Cervical Cancer.
Well, yeah, so that means you should want to rush out and get on the pill, right?
Yeah, totally.
And then just to make sure that your chances of ever having children is completely destroyed because, I mean, talk about eugenics. We still haven't even gotten to the eugenics aspects yet.
If you get cervical cancer and you live through it, then you're probably not going to be able to have kids anyways. So
Right.
It will permanently make you not have children. So if that's the purpose of this, then I guess that they're doing the right thing.
When they see these cancer studies and all this, well, hey, it limits childbirth, and that's the direction Bill Gates and Aldous Huxley and the eugenicists that they all wanted to go. That's fine. Let's just go with that, And
Yes.
if some women die and stuff, it's just going to, cull the population anyway. So none of that stuff really matters. So,
Yes.
of course, they're not going to have thorough studies and discussions and presentations of all of these things. When you were doing your research, how many talks that were this thorough on all of these issues did you find online?
I did not find that many talks. I went on YouTube. I found a few basic studies. Like I found the study of the monkeys on a YouTube video, and I elaborated on it. I did more research. I made sure that it was a viable resource. But I mean, more than not, I was unable to find good research unless I looked for detailed things, and they were buried. They were old studies. They were not looked up very much by many people. They weren't viewed a lot. You find 5 studies that say that birth control is bad, but you find one study that says it's good, and you're going to believe the good study.
Absolutely. And of course, that's the study that's going to be paid to be pushed to the top of the search results, et cetera. And then people will just, look through the first page of Google search results or whatever and say, oh, well, it's fine. And that's as far as I need to look. And they're not going to consider all of these factors. And no doubt there are women in the audience right now listening to this going, oh, I'm on the pill,
Yeah.
And so, we're speaking to those of you in the audience as well as those of you who are considering taking the pill. And, and that's why the title was left ambiguous, because we wanted to get both groups of people to watch this, not just those who were looking for the negative. Wow. 3 thumbs down for this episode. How do you thumb that down unless you're an Aldous Huxleyan eugenicist troll pig, Seriously.
Yes.
So, we always have the Steve trolls and the Joe trolls out there that try to, defund, demonetize our shows and to try to suppress the channel and everything as much as they can. Let's see. So, what's that?
Definitely not uncommon. You see it everywhere.
Yeah, well, any show that speaks the truth, they want to, deplatform and get rid of. And You're not supposed to be talking about all of the negative that these things do. So, updated information about FDA-funded study on risks of blood clots in women taking birth control containing drospirenone. Do you want to talk about that one? Let me see if I can get that one up here.
Yeah.
There we go.
So yeah, this just goes over some of the health risks of taking the birth controls containing this certain ingredient. This, if I'm not mistaken, drospirenone is very common in a lot of birth controls. I'm going to look it up just to make 100% sure. Yes, perfect. So it is in any birth control with progestin in it. And there's a lot of mixed or combination pills which have progestin in it, and progestin only pills. So any pill with drospirenone in it or progestin is going to give you a much higher risk of blood clots or heart issues or cardiovascular issues in general.
So if you're young and your mom dropped dead of a heart attack or had a blood clot or, an aneurysm or something, maybe that's why, because she's been on the pill.
Possibly. And there are a lot of children nowadays whose parents are not together or haven't been together for a long time. Their parents are not as kind to them. They are violent. They are messed up. They may not still be on the pill, but this could be a result of being on the pill for a very long time. And it could have permanently messed up their brain, made them apathetic, and made them unable to love their child as much as they would without being on the pill. So there's a big umbrella of issues that come under the word the pill, which actually the pill was a term coined by Aldous Huxley.
Absolutely, it was.
So that's another link to him in this. And his brother Julian Huxley was actually directly involved in making the pill with Margaret Sanger.
All right, so let's get into that. Now, I've been tracking these people and all of this agenda for years. Of course,
yes,
all things eugenics and MKUltra lead to a Huxley family member. And so all of those of you who've been waiting for us to mention Huxley's, so the birth control movement, it goes along with MKUltra, sex, drugs, and rock and roll. So that is part of the continued agenda of MKUltra. We see Julian Huxley here and all of the things that he was tied into and involved with. His brother Aldous is up here. Of course, Aldous created the term the pill. Let me see if I can find it here. And that was created in...
I believe that he coined the term in the early 1950s.
Right, and that's from, I forgot which book that was. Was that Brave New World or Brave New World Revisited?
I think it was Brave New World Revisited. Brave New World was in the 1930s, so.
Yeah, so I've got the quote there on screen for people to check that out, and there is always a Huxleyan involved in this stuff without exception, just about. That's, Brave New World Revisited, final chapter. So over and over and over, we see this psychopathic family involved in all of this type of eugenics and then selling it to people as a good thing. Now, part of the hypersexualization that I had mentioned to you was getting women off of pads and quote-unquote the rag and getting them onto tampons. And, so that, and the two main companies were Tampax and OB, and I had done some research on that in the database and trying to, piece that together a bit. But, there is a whole thing. So once the hymen is broken, then it doesn't matter, and then they are free for, free love and hypersex.
Yes, and another interesting thing is that Tampax is sold a lot. They try to sell it to teenagers. They try to sell it to kids that are before the age of consent. 16 years old is the youngest age of consent in the United States. They will sell tampons to kids 13 to 15, which is below the age. Tampons could possibly break your hymen. They could create all of these things. And when your hymen is broken, it's not going to hurt to have sex. So it makes them less scared. It makes them more outgoing to the idea, more open-minded, and more liberated, as Margaret Sanger would like to say.
Speaking of Margaret Sanger, let me pull her up on the screen here.
Yeah.
And I had sent you a bunch of research and documents on Margaret Sanger that I had pulled from Princeton and other places, but... So she's tied right in with them all, and actually,
She is pretty much the main straight point to the birth control movement. She was fascinated by Aldous Huxley. She was very influenced by his work and his theories, and she really created a lot of her ideals around what he said was right, which was obviously not right.
Right. Well, unless... right from a complete psychopath's point of view, working for the CIA and engineering the MKUltra program to destroy society and recreate the biblical fall. In that sense, he was right, but not right in any normal, standard, non-psychopathic sense of the term. I mean, So Aldous Huxley and Julian Huxley and Margaret Sanger. When you go back far enough, sure, the feminists and you can look at the suffragette movement and all of this stuff as the forefront of being the largest murderers in all history. But behind them, you have the Huxley family and Margaret Sanger, for that matter. And so, the Huxley family is responsible for the largest genocide in history. And, of course, they would be, high-fiving each other for that. And, I've spent the last, 8 years at least exposing the Huxley family and their depth of all of this stuff.
Yes.
So let's get into, let's read these quotes and whatnot that you've got on the notes there.
Yes. So the fifth reason is listing the chronology of the social engineers recreating Huxley's Brave New World. And it starts in 1921, actually before the Brave New World was released, when Margaret Sanger founded the American Birth Control League. The founding principles were as follow. We hold that children should be 1, conceived in love, 2, born of the mother's conscious desire, 3, and only begotten under conditions which render possible the heritage of health. Therefore, we hold that every woman must possess the power and freedom to prevent contraception except when these conditions can be satisfied.
As if she couldn't just close her legs, or only, or just, not have sex except during, not have sex during ovulation. And most women that are not on the pill, they become in tune with their bodies and they know when they're ovulating.
Yes.
And so they don't need that kind of thing. But what's interesting is, back when Sanger, in 1921, so this is, 98 years ago, we're talking about when, per their official population numbers, the population of the planet was less than 1 billion. And so thanks to these same psychopaths, they are actually the ones who created the population boom and the problem to begin with, by all of the hypersexualization and everything. So everything that they're attempting to stop, they created, and then, they can't even, in the CIA, these incompetent twits, they can't look at this agenda that they're selling that's caused all of these problems. Their ultimate goal is Agenda 21 or 30, whatever it is in the end, and, the ultimate revolution, and have us all, that's a term that, of course, that Aldous Huxley said, to have us the ultimate slaves. But they created all of the problems that they blame us for in hindsight, but they were at the forefront of, if you can believe population numbers at all, of this very problem that we face today. That is caused by the Huxleys themselves.
Yes. And if you look at how women are now and look at how they are doing, they're doing the slut walk, all this crazy stuff that they're doing that are government funded. The government claims to be pro-woman and anti-man, but in reality, if you look at birth control and how it's negatively affecting women, it's risking lives, it's making them crazy, it's making all the rest of us that are sane look bad. This really is, when you come down to it, this really is a war on women from the government trying to create problems for men and women. It's a war on humanity.
Absolutely. And then, they actually, here's a perfect example. It's not a very good image, but slut pride. Well, pride is one of the 7 deadly sins. So they actually, they'll go about prideful of this degenerate behavior, and that they've wiped themselves out, their families out, their country out, their society out, all of this stuff. I don't want to expand too many of those pictures, probably because there's going to be nudity there, and then they'll find some reason to flag the show. So, like always. So it's like, wow, it's, and then they blame the Bible for suppressing everybody, when the New Testament warns that by not living in truth and doing all of this behavior, all of these things that we see going on around us will happen. And I admit I was one of those people, even a few years ago, before it all, hit me, and I went, oh, I get it now. So let's see. You had another quote here by Margaret Sanger. Do you want to read that one, or should I?
If you would like to read it, you can, whichever you would prefer.
As an advocate of birth control, I wish to take advantage of the present opportunity to point out that the unbalance between the birth rate or did you read this one, of the unfit and the fit, admittedly, the greatest present menace to civilization, can never be rectified by the inauguration of a cradle competition between these two classes. So, of course, this elite class that Margaret Sanger and Aldous Huxley and these CIA, MI6 eugenicist psychopaths belonged in. They were the upper class controlling factions. They were the Fabian socialists working with the Tavistock Institute. Here's the Fabian Society. Again, these are communists. It's the wolf in sheep's clothing. They are communist socialists, and they want to break down the family so that they can create the government as the ultimate power of control. Yes. This wasn't to free you through psychedelics and birth control and all the free love and free sex and free drugs you can get. It's the antithesis, and you have to think this stuff through, folks. So anything the Huxley family is involved in, as I've shown in show after show after show for years, if a Huxley family touched it, it's a hot pile of crap. So yes. You have to step back and look at the facts. If there's even a hint anywhere that a Huxley was involved, you should already know that something is wrong and that there is a hidden agenda with it.
Yes. And what's interesting about this is if you look at other things based on birth control and the fit versus unfit relating to communism, welfare is the beginning of socialism.
Absolutely.
And, welfare, people only have children to get welfare in a lot of cases. And that they don't have a husband, they don't have one partner, they have several partners that they have several kids with between these different people. And if you look at how communism is anti-religion, it's anti-family. They want the people to rely on the government, and welfare is the first step in doing that.
And, getting people who are not landowners and don't have a stake in the society, giving them the vote, because, when the vote is given to landowners, who are invested in society, it's not just about a giveaway. They're going to structure things so that, everybody has the best survival rate. Whereas when everybody is given the vote carte blanche, as we see today, now we see killing babies is okay, rampant drug use is okay. Whereas all of these things in the past had strict controls on, yes. And now it's just a free-for-all. And so, the 60s psychedelic movement, all of this stuff was the road to now paved by the Huxley family to get us into a position of total societal collapse so that they can be the ultimate slave masters in the final revolution. And so when you fall into iniquity, the Bible talks about this, other religious texts talk about this, iniquity leads to slavery every single time. So they don't want you reading these books that explain all this stuff, and they really do. It's not just my religious rant here. These books actually do explain, hey, if you don't live in truth, this is where you're going to end. All of this iniquity that you're involved in ends here. So when people read these books, it breaks all of this stuff down and explains it. And so, Aldous Huxley, in his conversations with Timothy Leary, was very explicit that the Bible was their biggest obstacle to selling this whole agenda.
Yes, and if you compare the United States now to Soviet Russia during the Cold War era, where they were pushing abortion, they were pushing no religion, they were starving their people, they all had equal rights, and the equal rights were not good.
Right. Well, people should be, you should have the rights based on your merit, and what you put in, not just, I exist, therefore I deserve, and here's my,
Yes.
give me my handout, right?
Yes.
And
And if you
so,
look at, oh, sorry, go ahead.
well, I was just going to say, and it's like when you bring things back on merit, you teach people that they have to work and earn what they want. It's like these, kids in soccer today. It's like, oh, everybody gets a medal. We don't want to hurt any kids' feelings. Well, how does that make the kids who strive really hard to be the best? They're going to be like, well, this kid over here didn't do anything, and he got a medal and I got one. So what's the point? And so
Yeah.
it breaks their character down from even wanting.
It doesn't make you want to be competitive.
It doesn't make you want to be competitive or to strive to do better. It makes you.
Yes.
It makes everybody incompetent.
It makes everybody be kind of just put half of the effort that they could be putting in.
Right. It's like everybody equal makes everything mediocre.
Yes. And if you actually look at the Green New Deal and see how they're talking about, making people equal, they talk about all this kind of stuff. It's just like saying, oh, something that Ocasio-Cortez said in the Green New Deal, just something along the lines of, if you can't work or if you don't want to work, then you're going to still get money. Nobody wants to work a full-time job unless they're passionate about what they're doing. So what's that going to do to the economy?
It's going to destroy it. And all of the families who actually produce and create things on their own prerogative, by their own initiative, that's going to be all stifled and wiped out. And then what happens is every time, and we've seen it over and over and over and over in every country on earth, and that's the agenda. They, Ocasio-Cortez and, these dimwit Democrats who are pushing this whole socialist agenda, they have to know what they're doing, because you can look historically at any country in the world, and every single one of them who has implemented this type of stuff has collapsed. So,
yes.
The agenda has to be to collapse the country, and so then when the country collapses, then you can have George Soros standing there. Oh, I have the solution, And so, look, I have the world's socialist government right here ready. And then after, 20 or 30 years, that'll collapse. And, it's idiocy stacked high. And it's designed to destroy the family, the extended family, etc. So let's get back to your quote. Sorry, did you want to?
No, for sure.
Okay.
One more thing that I wanted to say about that, just based on the communism and such, if you look at one of the more successful communist states now, China, they have set jobs for people because that's what they have to do to keep the economy running. So people not having jobs and not wanting to work isn't going to work out for very long. You're going to be forced to do something that you don't want to do. It's going to be basically paid slavery.
Exactly. And then, so how is China surviving on top of that? Well, they mass produce crappy products that they sell to the United States by taking our jobs, right? And so eventually, when the United States collapses, their system will collapse as well. So,
they rely on another country in order to survive. And North Korea just had to do the same thing because they could not be sufficient anymore. They could not provide for their people. They couldn't provide anything healthy. People were getting worms from the fertilizer. It was becoming so bad that they have to rely on other countries, but they are still communist.
Yep.
So it's just dangerous. It's a very dangerous kind of lifestyle. You're putting everybody's life at risk by converting to a socialist or communist.
Yeah. People that are for socialism and communism are bafflingly ignorant. And then they'll say, see, look what capitalism has done, and there's people that get wealthy in capitalism, but you have a choice and you have the freedom to build your own company on your own initiative and do things on your own. Whereas, it's like right now, I saw a news article the other day came by, the guy that promoted all of this, immigrant, from the Middle East into Germany, and all of this socialist rhetoric. They came and, hey, we got to take your house for two of these Islamic families for your, to move into your home. So they kicked him out of his house, the very guy that passed all of that stuff. And he's like, well, I didn't think it would happen to me. It's like, perfect. that he is the ultimate example of the idiocy of it all, because, you know, it came back to bite him, and he's the one that put it into place. So, you know, it's absolutely perfect that happened. But let's go to your next quote here.
Yeah, of course.
The objective is, I think, or our objective is?
Our objective is unlimited sexual gratification without the burden of unwanted children. Women must have the right to live, to love, to be lazy, to be an unmarried mother, to create, to destroy. The marriage bed is the most degenerative influence in the social order. The most merciful thing that a family does to one of its infant members is to kill it. She mentions killing a child there. People say that abortion isn't murder. She says it right there, that you kill something.
And she says that the marriage bed is the most degenerative influence in social order, socialism order. It's not degenerative to the family because it creates a family and extended family backbone. But if you want a communist system, you need a social order, so they can't have, you know, families with real solid structure. They have to have, you know, single mothers reliant upon the state, upon the socialist infrastructure.
Yes. And if you look below on The Brave New World by Aldous Huxley, in his book, he writes about how children are born according to regulation by the government, and they are created in the hatchery and conditioning center, but they take place in a laboratory. That's where the embryos take place. Women do not have children. Right. There is no family. And he writes about this like this is the perfect world. And,
yeah, you know, and you hear them drop, it's a brave new world in movies and TV shows, etc., all the time. This is what they're pushing for.
Yes.
So did you want to read that full quote there?
Aldous.
And by the way, we're up to 1932.
Yes. And his quote from the book, Brave New World, is, and round her waist she wore a silver-mounted green Morocco surrogate cartridge belt, bulging, for Lenina was not a free martin with the regulation supply of contraceptives. So basically, in this story, people are sleeping around because they have contraceptives, but they're not having children. They're not allowed to have children.
And you want to, let's just let's just keep pushing through all of this. It's pretty good stuff here.
Yeah. And right here, it says babies are created in the hatchery and conditioning center, and production of and conditioning of embryos takes place in a laboratory. It is a combination of the drug soma in the book and a constant supply of birth control that creates the drugged out, sex crazed culture in the Brave New World. That's exactly what they're doing today by pushing drugs like LSD, mushrooms, all of these things.
DMT, Joe Rogan's DMT, ayahuasca, all of this stuff. You know, that is the Brave New World agenda. And you got to have your fleshlight too. You got to, you know, because all of the women are on the pills, so the guys have to masturbate. So there's the fleshlight and the sex craze, right? You know, It's just like, wow.
And if you look at states like Oregon right now, it's trying to pass the legalization of mushrooms,
right?
Which there is no, I mean, people say that there are medical reasons to use mushrooms.
They say for PTSD, but these studies, and people bring these up to me all the time, and they're all put out by Johns Hopkins, by doctors that I've interviewed in the past, like Roland Griffiths, et cetera. And when I look back at the studies that they've done, you know, it's all may, might, could, and all of this kind of language. And you look at their backgrounds and everything, and then every one of them is connected through these CIA-funded studies and groups and whatnot. It's like, oh, I see the agenda. And you know, we discussed on the show years ago that their idea was to get government-sanctioned soma lab set up where people could have a government-issued religious experience, so to speak. And the government is so wonderful. Look, I just, you know, they're not bad. They gave me my daily dose of soma, and I just had a so-called out-of-body experience, right?
Yeah, and the thing is, you know, mushrooms, they say that it's for PTSD. You don't need to use mushrooms on a constant basis. People use mushrooms for the most part recreationally because they want to have fun. They don't
Right.
use it for medical reasons.
And if you're living in truth, again, this is all about recreating the fall, and this is from that, from Aldous Huxley. In fact, I will pull up that quote so that everybody can see it.
All right.
It's in my article in Thuygen's What's in a Name, and since we've brought up this quote several times already tonight, and I can just, if you pull up the article on the website and just search "rolling on the floor with laughter" or "rolling on," it'll pull it right up. So here is this quote, and these are evolutionary matters. They cannot be rushed. Work privately, initiate artists, writers, poets, jazz musicians, elegant courtesans, painters, rich bohemians, and they'll initiate the intelligent rich. Okay, so this is about a movement through the upper elite. That's how everything of culture and beauty and philosophic freedom has been passed on. So, of course, he's trying to crash that. And this is a conversation between Aldous Huxley and Timothy Leary. Your role is quite simple. Become a cheerleader for the evolution. That's what I did and my grandfather before me. So he's talking about himself and Thomas Henry Huxley. These brain drugs, mass-produced in the laboratories, will bring about vast changes in society. This will happen with or without you or me. All we can do is spread the word. The obstacle to this evolution, Timothy, is the Bible. Okay, Genesis 3 in the Bible opens up, and I've got Genesis 3 quoted right here. That's what they're trying to recreate, the fall. They meant it right there. The obstacle to this so-called evolution, and you have to keep in mind that everything that they sell in is an inversion. Nobody's evolving at all. We're devolving. Culturally, yes. Morally, intellectually, everything is devolving into destruction. I don't remember any discussion of brain drugs in the Bible. Timothy, have you forgotten the very first chapters of Genesis? Jehovah says to Adam and Eve, I've built you a wonderful resort eastward of Eden. You can do anything you want, except you are forbidden to eat the fruit of the tree of knowledge. The first controlled substances. Exactly. The Bible begins with food and drug prohibitions. So the fall and original sin were caused by the taking of illegal drugs. By this time, Aldous was chuckling away, very pleased with himself, and I was rolling on the floor with laughter. And people, if you want to find where that quote is, Timothy Leary in a conversation with Aldous Huxley, flashbacks, Torture Penguin, page 44, right there. So, so this is, again, this same psychopathic family, and you have these twits in the CIA promoting all of this stuff and thinking that, the ultimate communist society is what we want and or what they want, and somehow it's good. I don't understand how they cannot see even their own children falling prey to this crap. But all right, let's go through some more of these quotes or more of these citations. What about 1948? What happened then?
Sorry. 1948 was the year that the International Committee of Planned Parenthood formed. And that it was before Planned Parenthood was created, but they did start getting together and talking and trying to create a business together that was based on birth control, abortion, and other, helping parents plan. Planned Parenthood is a very bad name for the company. It's more like planned killing your child.
Right. Yeah. I'm sure they've planned very few families ever in their history. And they, and it's like, it's just an excuse to allow women rampant sexuality and behave like sluts. All right. So then 1950s, what happens then?
The early 1950s was when the clinical trials of the pill began. And a quote here by Margaret Sanger, birth control is the first important step woman must take toward the goal of her freedom. It is the first step she must take to be man's equal. It is the first step they must both take towards human emancipation. Morality and birth control was the name of the article.
Is that one of the articles I sent you?
I believe so, yes.
I was just going to see if I could pull up some of those documents that I found here. Let me see if I can find those. That would be Princeton, Margaret Sanger. Here's some of them. I know I have more. Here's just some of the letters between Julian Huxley. It looks like Julian Huxley and Margaret Sanger. But World Tribute to Margaret Sanger, and this is signed by Julian Huxley down here. This is February 23, 1961. So, and this is where you can find these Arthur Kroc papers. And I do have more of these documents between these people. Let me see here if this one has it. It does not. I was just... Anyway, why don't you read on there, and I'll see if I can find any more of this good stuff.
All right. On April 13th, 1953, MK Ultra was officially funded. This was around the same time that the pill was being released. This is definitely no coincidence.
Yeah, you're cutting out a little bit right there. You're cutting out a little bit right there. It's probably somebody else in your house using the computer.
All right. Possibly. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you. So yeah, just make sure others in there aren't overloading your bandwidth. So let's see. So, and I did just find those documents, but we can see here, this is the American Birth Control League, Margaret Sanger. And, she's paraded about as a hero. She was a mass eugenicist who is hell-bent on destroying families and, selling all of this stuff as freeing women. This is the spin that they used to destroy the families. But, there's quite a few pages here. There's like 50 pages, 53 pages here. But I just wanted to show some of those there so that people, if they're interested, they can pause on some of these and read them. But all of this is, again, it's spun. Their rhetoric is the opposite of what they sell it to the public as. All right,
yes.
so
definitely not as opposite as it could get.
1953, MK Ultra, and then 1954 is essentially the first major publication of MK Ultra, which was Aldous Huxley's Doors of Perception, and details his experiences on mescaline with Humphrey Osmond. And of course, Humphrey Osmond, interesting tie-in here, is that he was one of the leading researchers on adrenochrome, which of course is using the adrenaline of blood and babies, and it's the oxidase of adrenaline, and it's basically
in the blood, correct?
Right, and it basically causes a mescaline-like reaction. But Humphrey Osmond, who helped Huxley with that and was his personal doctor and was also involved in MK Ultra, he was behind that. And then in May 13, 1957, Gordon Wasson publishes his Seeking the Magic Mushroom in Life magazine, kicking off the psychedelic revolution. And then right behind that, you want to go with that one? 1961?
Yes, 1961, the birth control pill was made available to all. They say that it was legalized as a contraceptive in some sources. It was not. The FDA did not pass it originally as a contraceptive. They passed it as a menstrual regulator. And that launched the sexual revolution. And
Absolutely.
right after, in 1965, legalized.
Oh, you're cutting out there again. Make sure whomever's in the house is turning off their internet. So in 1965, porn was legalized. And then in 1966, which was actually October 6, 1966, and so they sell it as 666, the Summer of Love is kicked off, and then they officially name it for June 21st, 1967, which of course is Midsummer's Eve, which is a satanic night. So you have two references to Satanism there for the kicking off of the Summer of Love and, of course, free love. So they had to have the drugs and the birth control in place and ready to go with pornography before they could kick off the Summer of Love. And so Several months after the subcommittee hearing, LSD was banned in California. And then in Storming Heaven, Jay Stevens reveals, although the Summer of Love officially began on June 21, the summer solstice, its actual beginning, occurred the previous fall, specifically on October 6, 1966, the day the California law made the possession of LSD a misdemeanor went into effect. And then the University of Richmond, Virginia website states, Leary was one of the many quote-unquote experts who testified at the 1966 subcommittee hearings, which, of course, I'm the one who exposed all of that, which showed both ardent support and uncompromising opposition to LSD. Just several months after the subcommittee hearings, LSD was banned in California. And why don't you continue with 1973?
1973 was when the Roe versus Wade trials were there, and that eventually led to the legalization of
abortion.
It eventually led to the legalization of abortion, which when you look at the actual cases and what the woman that was in Roe versus Wade came out and said, she said that it was all based on lies. And so it's technically not even based on real information. They were not following the court rules, which it should be invalid at that point because it's not true.
Right, exactly. And then continue on.
The first clinically reported case of AIDS was in 1981. This is after the sexual revolution became a big thing, after abortion was illegalized. People were having sex, they were trying new things, and they did so much. They slept around so much.
The gay bathhouses and all of that. It's all of this stuff, the pornography, the drugs is out there. You have the cocaine and the methamphetamines and the amyl nitrates and everything. And I interviewed Dr. Peter Duesberg years back on the AIDS scandal. I recommend people check that out. I think I interviewed him in like 2010. It's been a long time. And then bringing us all the way to today, 2019, feminists. Go ahead, read.
Feminists are responsible for the largest genocide in history. 1.5 billion babies have been aborted. And this is worldwide. This is since 1980. This goes back to that clock that we pulled up earlier in the interview. And this, people said that children are not, or that embryos aren't real babies. Babies have a heartbeat by the time they're at 12 weeks. That's when a lot of abortions happen.
Right. And then, of course, there's Ronald Reagan's famous quote that says, he says, I've realized that everybody who's for abortion has already been born.
Yes.
And so this number has gone up, of course, since we started the show by several hundreds of abortions.
Yes.
And so now, ladies and gentlemen, you have a clear history of the whole trajectory of this program. Thank you, the CIA. Thank you, Aldous Huxley. Thank you, all of you psychopaths who have worked for this to destroy society and humanity and to create a better culture for your degeneracy to be welcomed in, and
yes.
That's essentially what it was all about. So anyway, I don't know if the audience has any questions. Did you have anything else that you wanted to add?
When I think about it, it's definitely, I've got pretty much all of the information that I've already said based on birth control, but it makes you think, what's the next big thing that's going to happen? Is the Green New Deal going to actually be put into effect? Are there going to be bad politicians coming in? Is capitalism going to be eradicated in the United States? Is the abortion law going to get bad? Is it going to be, there's a lot of bad things that could happen just based on all of this. And if you look at history, it goes from bad to worse.
Right.
And
until people have had an absolute enough of the crap and stand up and do something about it, it's going to continue forth. So, people need to wake up and need to realize that this is social engineering and eugenics and that you've been had, and all your sex, drugs, and rock and roll and fornicating in the mud to your rock idols or your graven images was part of the plan to destroy our culture. It wasn't for your benefit. as much as you love your rock and roll and your Doors or your Beatles or your Rolling Stones or whatever the case may be, you know, this is where it's brought us. And I think I've done a pretty excellent job over the last 8 or 9 plus years to expose this agenda. And, you know, now we can finally look back at this all of these shows that I've done since that time, since about 2 years after I launched the show, and look back and see the whole agenda from beginning to end, and you know, where we are today. So anyway, that's I think, unless you have anything else to add, that's a good place to wrap it up.
All right, perfect. I do want to say that my mom helped me a lot with some of the research, and Keisha Baldwin is her name. She wasn't able to make it on the show tonight, but I do want to give her credit for a lot of the research that we did today. I would definitely not have been able to get all of this together on time if it wasn't for her.
So, well, thanks to your mom, and thanks to everybody who's participated. Please support the show. We can't do it without you. We need your donations more than ever now, with all of the crap going on, trying to demonetize the channel and everything. So please support the show, donate. I've put the link up there in the chat, and it's there in the show notes as well. Thank you so much, everybody, and that's a wrap. Good night.
All right.